Oi, I've got a bone to pick with you. I recently brought out a nice video about making a butterfly. There he is. And the video, well, it tanked. And the one before that, I forged an iron spider, dressed as Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Thor, and the video still tanked. So I know what it is you guys want. You want me to conform like every other blacksmith on YouTube, and you want me to make a knife. You know what? Fine, let's make a knife. I'll make a knife, I'll make the best knife you've ever seen.
Shut up and sit down.
Right, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this properly. I do not consider myself a bladesmith. I consider myself a blacksmith, and a kind of iffy one at that. But for this project, I'm going to try something pretty extreme, pretty hardcore, and definitely new to me. So let's dive right in. Right, this is what we're going to be making. I've designed this stubby little cleaver type thing, and it feels really nice in the hand. Now I want to be trying to make this knife out of some kind of Sanmai, Cu Mai,
oh my,
type thing. And to add to the difficulty level, I want to be trying to forge this out of one solid block of metal. So there's not going to be any scales or handle material, it's just going to be one big chunk. And that nicely brings us onto what we're going to be making this thing out of. So this is going to be the layout of the knife. We've got some raindrop Damascus, a piece of copper, some 01 tool steel, copper, another piece of raindrop Damascus, copper, 01 tool steel, copper, another piece of Damascus. So the idea is the Damascus case is what you're predominantly going to see along the blade, with these nice little copper streaks running through it. The 01 tool steel, once etched, should turn basically black to give nice contrast, and then we'll have more Damascus for the actual blade of the knife. Now like I said, I've never tried this before, so this is all an experiment, but I need to get this acetoned up, stack it, and then weld it together. Well, that took a lot longer than I was expecting. Turns out, copper does not like being welded, even though technically I'm just welding between the pieces of steel. Hopefully, we don't get any leaks, although I'm sure there'll always be one or two. Alright guys, it's voiceover time. So the first step is I'm just consolidating this billet a little bit, just getting all the air out in between the layers and trying to get them as close together as possible to make sticking them much easier. Once that's done, I get this thing up to a much hotter temperature, and at this point the copper inside is sort of gone tacky or possibly even molten, and at this point we're effectively brazing the pieces of steel together. It's similar to forge welding, but not as hot. Now you might be wondering how strong copper actually is in a knife blade, and according to a video I saw by Tyrell Knife Works, brazing copper actually has 70,000 psi in tensile strength, so it's plenty strong enough. Now I've moved on to the power hammer, and at this point I'm just squishing the billet down, getting it into a more square shape. And then I'm taking it over to my forging press and using these pretty aggressive fullering dies. I'm squishing the shoulder into the material where I want the blade to start and the handle to stop, but I'm also going to go along the whole blade, and this is to try and create a sort of wavy pattern in the copper once I've ground down the bevels. You'll see in the end this worked kinda well. I actually wish I'd gone a little bit more, but the tricky part here is trying to keep the core straight. What I don't want is for the central piece of Damascus to get all wibbly wobbly, and then grinding it would be an absolute nightmare, and it could actually potentially ruin the blade. So I'm just taking my time, going along and squishing this thing, and whilst trying to keep it as straight as possible. And then once that's done, I take it back over to the power hammer, knock off all the high spots, and get this thing down to a nice flat billet, as you can see here. Shut up, calm, soothing voiceover Phil. It's time to grind. Alright, here's the part I'm most worried about. It's time to heat this thing up and quench it. Now, I have never quenched a Cu Mai blade, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm very concerned that when the metal is cooled, it's going to contract at different rates, meaning that it could potentially delaminate. I'm also worried that if I get it too hot, the copper will melt out. And yeah, overall, this is where I really don't want things to go wrong, because I've invested a lot of time in this guy. Looks nice though. Feels good. Right, I'm just using this piece to preheat the oil. Hopefully that will reduce the chance of this thing cracking. There's normalising cycle 1 done. I'm heating this thing up to critical and then just letting it air cool. And the idea is that removes any stresses, reducing the chance of warping and cracks. I'm going to do this one more time, but I'm not going to film it, so the next thing you'll see is the quench. So now I'm tempering this thing at 200 degrees Celsius for 2 hours, and I'm going to do that twice. This t-shirt was clean when I started. Yeah. There we go, there's the knife out of the temper. Looks good, very pretty. And now it's time for everybody's favourite part, the hand sanding. This is going to take a while. Before, after. Right, we finally got this thing hand sanded back to 150 grit. It only took me about 5 hours in total to do this whole thing. But hopefully now that we've got rid of a lot of the high spots, the next few grits should go a lot smoother. But yep, this is certainly taking a while. I'm not going to bore you with another montage, so I'll just show you it when it's at an 800 grit. 2 days that took me. There are so many horrible, finicky little facets on this thing. But finally, we have now got this thing up to an 800 grit. It's not very shiny at the moment because it's covered in some dirty, grindy oil, but it's as far as I was going to take it. I did toy with the idea of taking up to 1200 grit, but having gone through all of that, I decided I'd rather headbutt myself in the face, so we're just going to go with this. Next step is I'm going to etch on my maker's mark, just here. Well, the touch mark possibly came out a little bit fainter than I would like. I'm not sure how well this is going to hold up to the acid etching, but we'll see. Can potentially redo it afterwards anyway. So the first thing before we etch is we need to give this thing a clean with some acetone, so let's do that quickly. And next we're going to fill this tank with some 1:1 ferric chloride and water mix, and we're going to leave it in there to etch. And I'm going to babysit this thing because I'm not entirely sure how long it needs. I'm going to give it a quick test etch, just to make sure there's no contaminants on the blade anywhere. I'll give that a couple of seconds, then I'll take it out and make sure there's no gunks of oil or anywhere that I've missed. That looks pretty good. Okay, let's pop it back in then. Right, it's been in the acid now for 20 minutes, which after checking some YouTube videos should be about right. So let's take this thing out. We're going to neutralise the acid with some bicarbonate of soda. This is the worst squirt bottle ever. So now that the acid is neutralised, I've taken it indoors and just given it a quick wash in some soapy water. And I don't know how well you can see, but the copper sort of bleeds over onto the steel in places. Like up here, you see it turns the actual Damascus coppery. So we're just going to go over this very lightly with some WD-40 and some 2000 grit sandpaper. There we go, something like that. Now you might have noticed that the actual Damascus is looking a little bit kind of matte grey, as is the 01 tool steel in the middle. So the trick we're going to use to get this out is, again, I'm going to acetone it down, and then I'm going to put it in some instant coffee. I'm going to leave it in there for 2 hours, and hopefully this should come out nice and dark. But we'll see. Again, I've not tried this before. But sod's law, wouldn't you know it, apparently I drink too much coffee, so I'm going to have to go to the shop and get some more. Screw you, Dow Egberts. Yeah, that's what Daddy likes. Let's get some water warm. Wow, it's like strobing on the camera. And I'm just going to use this old Coke bottle, fill it up with this instant coffee. So let's do that. Easy does it. Let's try not to poke a hole in the bottom of this thing. There we go. So the clock is set. And I've got some editing to do. It's time. Let's see how we did. Come here. The whole house smells amazing. Maybe a little darker? Oh, actually, in proper light, that looks way better. Dig that. Now the final step before sharpening, I'm just going to give this thing a coat of beeswax just to help protect it and make it gleam. Hell freaking yeah. How good does that look? Right, sharpening, glamour shots. Let's do it! Yeah! I sharpened this thing off camera because I can. Let's do the good old-fashioned arm shave test. Yep, that works. Ugh, got a cold. So there we go, guys. I've made a knife for you. Now you can stop going on about it. I am really pleased with the way this thing came out. It looks absolutely stunning. Is it perfect? No, I'm not a bladesmith. But considering this is, I think, the second knife I've ever made, this is a marked improvement on the first. But yeah, if you like what you saw, do me a favour and hit the thumbs up. And if you really like what you saw, do me a favour and subscribe. And that's it. Actually, no it's not. Go and watch the butterfly video and go and watch the Spider-Man one. They're really good. Anyway, see you later. Bye bye.